Hi, I'm Marin. I paid for the venue, the caterer, the florist, the string quartet, even the custom napkins with her initials embroidered in gold thread. And yet, the morning of my sister's rehearsal dinner, my mother pulled me aside, squeezed my arm just hard enough to leave a mark, and whispered, "Don't you dare make tomorrow about you. I wasn't the maid of honor. I wasn't even in the wedding party. I was the woman who wrote every check, answered every vendor call at 2 a.m., and still got seated at a table near the kitchen door. But here's the thing. What broke me wasn't the bill. It was how easily they erased the person paying it, so I did the one thing none of them saw coming. I pulled the funding 24 hours before she walked down the aisle. Ever wonder what it takes for a woman to cancel her own sister's dream wedding, the one she bankrolled from the very first deposit? It started 7 months earlier, with a phone call I should have let go to voicemail. My sister Noelle had gotten engaged to Bryce on a Tuesday afternoon in October, and by Tuesday evening, my mother had already started a group chat titled Wedding of the Century with 43 members, none of whom were me. I found out from my cousin Dina, who texted me a screenshot and said, "Did you get removed, or were you never added?" I told her it was probably a glitch. I told myself that too. 3 days later, my mother called. Not to invite me into the planning, not to share the joy, but to ask if I could cover the deposit on the venue. "You know how tight things are for Noelle and Bryce right now," she said. Her voice dipped in that honey-coated authority she'd mastered over the years. "It's a vineyard in Napa. 12,000 for the deposit alone. But you've always been so good with money, Marin. Good with money. That was the family code for, has money and won't say no." I transferred the funds that night. No contract, no written agreement, just a Zelle confirmation and a thumbs-up emoji from my mother. That was the last time anyone said thank you. Over the next 6 months, my role quietly shifted from sister to shadow accountant. The florist $4,200, billed to my card because Noelle said hers was between cycles. The photographer's retainer $2,800, sent directly to my Venmo with a note that read "Sis duties, lol." The string quartet, the welcome bags, the rehearsal dinner at a private dining room overlooking the valley, all routed through my accounts, like I was some silent investor in a company that never planned to list my name on the door. I kept a spreadsheet, not because I wanted repayment, but because I wanted proof I existed in this story. By the time April rolled around, the total sat at $47,600. I stared at that number on my screen and felt something hollow open in my chest, not because of the money, but because not once in 7 months had anyone asked me how I was doing. Not once had Noelle called to say, "Hey, how's your life going?" Not once had my mother sent a text that didn't include a $sign or a vendor's name. The first time I felt truly invisible was the engagement party. My mother hosted it at her house in Sacramento, the same house I'd helped renovate 2 summers ago. New kitchen, new floors, the guest bathroom she showed off to every neighbor. I arrived early to help set up. I arranged chairs, folded napkins, sliced fruit until my fingers were sticky with cantaloupe juice. Guests started arriving, and Noelle swept in wearing a white dress that caught the light, like she was already rehearsing for the altar. Bryce followed behind, shaking hands with the confidence of someone who'd never been told he didn't belong. My mother stood in the center of the living room and gave a toast. "To the 2 people who make this family complete," she said, raising her glass toward Noelle and Bryce. She named every person who'd helped plan the party, her neighbor Gloria, Bryce's mother Janet, even the florist who'd delivered the centerpieces an hour late. She did not say my name. I stood near the kitchen doorway holding a tray of stuffed mushrooms, and I waited for the correction that never came. Later, when Noelle posed for a photo with the family, my mother waved me out of the frame. "Marin, sweetie, can you take this one? You're so much better with angles." I took the photo. I smiled. I uploaded it to the family cloud. And I went home that night and sat in my car in the parking garage for 11 minutes before I could make my legs carry me inside. But I told myself it was just one evening. One oversight. Families aren't perfect. I said that sentence so many times it stopped meaning anything, like a prayer I kept repeating long after I'd stopped believing. 2 months before the wedding, Noelle called me on a Wednesday evening. I could hear Bryce in the background, laughing at something on TV. She didn't start with hello. "So, we finalized the bridal party," she said, her voice light and careless, like she was reading off a grocery list. Bryce's sister Tanya is maid of honor, and then there's Kirsten, Jordan, and Haley. She paused, waiting for me to do the math. I did. 4 bridesmaids. 0 of them related to me by blood. What about me? I asked, keeping my voice even, the way I'd trained myself to do since childhood. We thought about it, Noelle said, and I could hear the rehearsed quality in her words, the slight lift at the end like she was pitching a compromise. But honestly, you're so much more valuable behind the scenes. Like, you're basically our wedding planner at this point, she laughed. I didn't. You want me to plan your wedding but not stand beside you at it? The silence on her end lasted exactly 4 seconds. I counted. Don't make this weird, Marin. Mom said you'd be fine with it. Mom said. Of course she did. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop and checked the next vendor invoice instead. That night, I took a long shower and let the water run until it turned cold, and I stood there shivering, because at least that kind of discomfort made sense. The bridesmaid dress fitting happened without me, obviously. But what I didn't expect was to find photos of it on Noelle's Instagram story, 4 women in matching sage green, holding champagne flutes, captioned, "My Forever Girls." The comments were a flood of heart emojis and squad goals. Someone wrote, "Where's your sister?" It was deleted within minutes. I know, because I watched the comment count drop from 47 to 46 in real time. I didn't post anything. I didn't text Noelle. I opened my banking app and stared at the latest charge, $1,150, for the bridesmaids' dress alterations. All 4 dresses. Billed to me. I closed the app and went to bed. 3 weeks before the wedding, I flew to Napa to meet with the venue coordinator. My mother was already there, sitting on the vineyard terrace in a wide-brimmed hat, sipping rosé like she was on the cover of a magazine. She saw me coming up the gravel path and waved without standing. "Oh, good, you're here. We need to talk about the seating chart." She spread a printed diagram across the table, each table numbered and color-coded. I scanned for my name. Table 1 was the family table my mother, Noelle, Bryce, Bryce's parents, his sister Tanya. Table 2 was the bridal party. Table 3 was extended family. I found my name on table 11, near the service entrance, between Bryce's college roommate's girlfriend and someone named +1 TBD. I looked at my mother. Table 11? She didn't look up from her rosé. It's not about the table number, Marin. It's about the energy. We wanted table 1 to feel intimate. Intimate, I repeated, tasting the word like it had gone sour. You're paying for all of this, I said slowly. I'm paying for all of this, and you put me next to a stranger's +1. She sighed the way she always sighed when I said something she considered inconvenient. You always do this. You always make everything transactional. Can't you just be happy for your sister? I wanted to say something sharp. Instead, I folded the seating chart, slid it back across the table, and said, "I'll be at the hotel if you need anything." She called after me, "Marin, don't be dramatic." I kept walking. The gravel crunched under my shoes, like it was punctuating every step I should have taken years ago. That evening in the hotel room, I opened a voicemail I'd saved for 4 years. It was from my grandmother, recorded 3 weeks before she passed. I'd listened to it exactly twice, once the day she died, and once on what would have been her 81st birthday. But tonight felt like the right time. Her voice was thin but steady, the way old fabric holds its shape even after years of washing. "Marin, honey, I know they don't see it, but you're the one holding that family together with your bare hands. One day, you're going to realize your hands are bleeding, and nobody handed you a bandage. When that day comes, I need you to put yourself down. Not the family. Yourself. You hear me? Love isn't supposed to leave you empty." I listened to it 3 times. Then I closed my eyes and pressed the phone against my chest and let her voice settle into the spaces my family had hollowed out. I didn't cry. I just felt something straighten inside me, like a bone resetting after being broken for so long I'd forgotten it was supposed to be whole. The week before the wedding, I arrived at the vineyard for the final walkthrough. Noelle was there with the bridal party, all of them in matching white sneakers and oversized sunglasses, taking photos among the grapevines. I carried a binder with every vendor contract, every receipt, every confirmation email. Nobody asked to see it. During the walkthrough, the venue coordinator turned to the group and said, "Who should I contact day of for any issues?" Before I could speak, my mother stepped forward. "That would be me and Tanya. We're handling everything." I stood there, holding 63 pages of logistics I'd coordinated over 7 months, and the coordinator didn't even glance at me. Later, as we left the tasting room, I overheard Noelle talking to Tanya near the fountain. "Honestly, Marin's been kind of a nightmare about all of this. She thinks because she helped with some payments, she should get special treatment. Some payments, $47,600, and she called it some payments." Tanya laughed. Classic older sister energy. I didn't confront them. I stood behind a pillar, opened my voice memo app, and pressed record. Let them say it. Let it exist somewhere outside my own head, so I could stop wondering if I was imagining things. That night, I sat in the hotel restaurant alone, eating pasta I couldn't taste, when my niece Poppy Noelle's stepdaughter, 6 years old, all ringlet curls and missing front teeth, wandered over from the lobby. "Auntie Marin, why aren't you at the sleepover?" I blinked. "What sleepover?" "Mommy and the bridesmaids are having a sleepover at Grandma's suite. There's face masks and pizza." She paused, tugging at her little denim jacket. "Grandma said you wouldn't want to come because you don't like fun things." I stared at this child who was only repeating what she'd been taught, whose understanding of me had been shaped entirely by people who never bothered to show her the truth. I put my fork down gently and smiled. "I love fun things, Poppy. I just wasn't invited." She tilted her head. "That's weird. Your family." "Yeah," I said. "That is weird." She skipped back to the elevator without another word. I sat there for a long time after she left, not moving, not eating, just letting the silence wrap around me like a second skin. That hurt more than the seating chart, more than the Instagram story, more than the $47,600. It wasn't cruelty. It was indoctrination. They weren't just excluding me. They were teaching a child to see me as less than. And that was the moment something shifted for good. The morning of the rehearsal dinner, I woke up before sunrise. I hadn't slept much. Not from anxiety, from clarity. The kind of wakefulness that comes when you finally stop negotiating with people who were never bargaining in good faith. I made coffee in the little hotel room machine, sat on the balcony overlooking the vineyard rows still silver with morning fog, and opened my laptop. My financial dashboard glowed in the dim light. I scrolled through every linked account, every auto payment, every shared access point. The venue balance, $22,000 remaining, was set to auto-charge my card at noon. The caterer's final payment, $8,400, was scheduled for 3 p.m. The florist, the DJ, the photo booth rental, the dessert bar, the transportation shuttle, all tethered to my name, my accounts, my permission. I took a breath that came from somewhere deeper than my lungs. Then I began. I called the venue first, told them I was the account holder and that I was revoking authorization for any further charges. The coordinator hesitated. "Ma'am, the event is tomorrow." "I'm aware," I said. "No further charges on this card. Please confirm in writing." She did. Next, the caterer. Same conversation, same calm voice, same result. Then the florist, the DJ, the shuttle service. One by one, I disconnected myself from every financial thread that held this wedding together. I didn't cancel the services, I simply removed my funding. If Noelle and Bryce wanted their dream wedding, they could pay for it. If my mother wanted to play producer, she could open her own wallet. I wasn't destroying anything. I was just stepping off the platform they'd been standing on. The last call was to the credit card company. I froze the card my mother had been using, the one I'd given her for emergencies 3 years ago, the same one that had quietly funded grocery deliveries, spa days, Noelle's hair appointments, and apparently Bryce's new golf clubs last month. "Status?" the representative asked. "Frozen," I said, permanently. I closed the laptop. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty. I felt like someone who had just set down a suitcase they'd been carrying up a hill for years, only to realize no one was waiting at the top. The rehearsal dinner was at 6 p.m. I showed up on time, hair done, wearing the navy dress I'd bought for myself. Not the beige one my mother had suggested, because you don't want to draw attention. The private dining room, was warm with candlelight and murmured conversation. Noelle sat at the head of the table with Bryce, glowing in a way that would have made me happy if she'd ever once turned that light in my direction. My seat was at the far end, between an empty chair and Bryce's uncle, who smelled like bourbon and asked me twice if I was the wedding planner girl. Midway through dinner, my mother stood to give a toast. She talked about Noelle's strength, her beauty, her resilience. She talked about Bryce's kindness and ambition. She named Tanya, the bridesmaids, even the florist who went above and beyond. She raised her glass. To everyone who made this possible, 40 people clinked crystal. I didn't lift mine, because I knew, and she knew, that everyone was code for everyone except me. After dinner, Noelle pulled me aside in the hallway. "Mom said you've been acting strange," she said, arms crossed, chin slightly raised. "Can you please just hold it together for one more day?" I looked at her, my younger sister, the one I'd driven to school every morning for 4 years, the one whose college application essay I'd edited at midnight, the one whose first apartment deposit I'd covered without being asked. "Hold what together exactly?" I said. "The wedding? Because I've been doing that for 7 months." She rolled her eyes. "See? This is what I'm talking about. Mom was right. You make everything about money." I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I opened the spreadsheet, every payment, every date, every vendor, every amount. I turned the screen toward her. $47,600. That's not making it about money. That's the money you made it about when you asked me to pay, and then pretended I didn't. She stared at the screen for 3 seconds, then looked away. "That's so tacky, Marin." She walked back into the dining room without another word. I stood in that hallway for a full minute. Then I opened my notes app and typed, "You weren't forgotten. You were factored out. And now you're removing yourself from the equation." I didn't go back to the dinner. I walked to the hotel lobby, ordered a tea I didn't drink, and watched the vineyard lights flicker through the floor-to-ceiling windows. My phone began buzzing around 9 p.m. First, the venue coordinator leaving a voicemail for Noelle, but Noelle's number wasn't on file. Mine was. "Hi, this is Rachel from Arbor Ridge. We need to discuss the outstanding balance before tomorrow's event. The card on file has been declined. Please call us back urgently." I didn't forward the message. I didn't call back. I simply turned my phone face down on the table and watched the night settle over the valley. By 10 p.m., the chaos had started. My mother called 4 times. Noelle sent a string of texts, first confused, then panicked, then furious. "What did you do? The venue says there's no payment?" "Marin, this isn't funny. Call me back now." I read every message like I was reading a weather report from a city I no longer lived in. Distant, factual, someone else's emergency. I typed one reply. To the family group chat I'd never been added to, but Noelle had finally included me in 45 minutes ago, the first time in 7 months. I handled what I needed to. No further responses required. Then I muted the thread, packed my suitcase, and booked a morning flight to Portland. Not because I'd planned to go there, because it was the first available seat to somewhere that wasn't here. The next morning, the morning of the wedding, I was already at the airport when the sun came up. Gate B7, a paper cup of black coffee, and a quiet that felt like the first honest silence I'd had in months. My phone screen was a gallery of missed calls and unread messages. I didn't open them. I just saw the previews scrolling by, like headlines from someone else's crisis. "Mom, you've ruined everything." "Noelle, I can't believe you would do this to me on my day." "Bryce, Marin, please. This is between you and them. Don't punish Noelle." "Mom again. We didn't raise you to be vindictive." I almost laughed at that one. They didn't raise me to be much of anything, except available. I powered off my phone before boarding. The flight attendant asked if I wanted water. I said yes. She handed me a small bottle and smiled. "Going home or getting away?" "Both," I said. Portland greeted me with rain, which felt right. Not sad rain, cleansing rain. The kind that makes the streets shine and the air taste like it's been rinsed. I checked into a small hotel near the river, unpacked the one bag I'd brought, and stood at the window for a while, watching a man walk his dog along the waterfront. He wasn't in a hurry. Neither was I. For the first time in 7 months, I had nowhere to be. No vendor to call, no check to write, no family member to accommodate. I ordered room service, a bowl of soup and bread, and ate it slowly, tasting every spoonful like I was relearning what it felt like to do something for myself without justifying it. That evening, I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. I named it Closed Account. Inside, I moved every receipt, every screenshot, every text exchange, every voicemail transcript. Not as ammunition, not as evidence for some future confrontation, but as proof for myself that I wasn't crazy, that the labor was real, that the erasure was deliberate. Then I highlighted the folder, right-clicked, and chose Archive. I sat back and exhaled. The folder was still there, but it was done, finished, filed under a version of my life I was no longer actively living. A few days later, back in my apartment in Denver, I found a bookstore I'd never noticed before, tucked between a laundromat and a Thai restaurant on a street I'd walked 100 times without looking up. It had mismatched chairs and handwritten shelf tags and a cat sleeping on a stack of cookbooks. I ordered an Americano and sat by the window where the afternoon light came through in long gold bars. The barista, a girl with paint under her fingernails, brought me my cup and paused. "I like your necklace," she said. "It looks like it has a story." I touched the small silver pendant, a crescent moon my grandmother had given me when I turned 18. I hadn't worn it in years. "It does," I said. And I smiled. Not for her, not for anyone, just because it did, and that was enough. Near the register, I noticed a flyer pinned to a corkboard. Solo Women's Retreat Glacier, National Park, hiking, journaling, silence. I read it twice. Then I scanned the QR code and registered on the spot. No one to ask, no one to inform, no one to budget around. Just my name, my card, my decision. On my way out, I passed a mother and daughter sitting on the bench outside. The little girl was leaning into her mom's lap, laughing about something while her mother braided her hair. I watched them for a moment, not with envy, not with bitterness, with recognition, the quiet kind that comes when you finally stop mourning what you never had and start honoring what you're building instead. Some families hand you belonging like a birthright. Others make you audition for it every single day. And some of us, the ones who kept showing up, kept paying, kept holding the whole thing together with bleeding hands, eventually learn that the bravest thing isn't staying. It's deciding that your own peace is worth more than their approval. They say silence can be cruel, but sometimes it's the clearest language you'll ever speak. For me, walking away wasn't about anger. It was about arithmetic, adding up all the times I gave and subtracting all the times I was seen, and realizing the balance had been negative for years. Setting boundaries didn't make me cold. It made me solvent emotionally, financially, spiritually. And if that made them uncomfortable, maybe it's because they'd been living on credit they never earned. Family, at its best, is a place where your name is spelled right, your seat is saved, and your presence is felt even before you walk through the door. If that's not what you have, it's not selfish to stop funding the illusion. It's survival. Maybe you've been the invisible one at the table. Maybe your generosity has been mistaken for obligation. Maybe someone once told you don't make this about you while making everything about themselves. If so, this story was for you. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose your own peace over your family's expectations? Have you ever walked away, not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself? Drop a comment. Type 1 if this story felt familiar, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and honest, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be here with the next one. And it might just feel a little too close to home.